You've been lied to. You were told that self-sabotage is just a lack of motivation, a failure of willpower, that if you just wake up earlier, plan better, stay positive, you'll finally stop ruining your chances, your goals, your relationships. But that's not the truth. That's the comforting lie you've been fed by pop psychology and productivity influencers who've never stood at the edge of their own internal collapse. The truth is far more brutal and far more freeing. Self-sabotage isn't a malfunction. It's not weakness. It's not laziness. It's fear. But not the kind of fear you think. You're not afraid of failure. You're not afraid of pain. You've survived those before. You've endured rejection, disappointment, humiliation, and you're still here. No, the thing you fear most is becoming the person you're meant to be. You fear what happens if you actually succeed. You fear the unknown version of yourself that exists on the other side of transformation. Why? Because that version demands the death of the old you. And here's the brutal truth. Self-sabotage is self-protection in disguise. It's not that you don't want to change. It's that your identity is rooted in your current limitations. You've built your entire personality around your wounds, your traumas, your coping mechanisms. And to let those go would feel like losing yourself entirely. So you destroy your progress the moment it threatens to dismantle the familiar cage you've mistaken for home. That's not a motivational slogan. That's a philosophical diagnosis. And it's one Søren Kierkegaard made nearly 2 centuries ago. He called it despair, but not just sadness, not just hopelessness. For Kierkegaard, despair was the sickness of the self, the conflict between who you are and who you're meant to become. And it's this conflict that fuels your sabotage. Because deep down you sense it. If you truly lived as your authentic self, you would have no excuses left. No masks, no blame to throw, no victim story to retreat into. You'd be forced to confront the weight of responsibility that freedom demands. And so instead, you shrink, you delay, you half-commit. You punish yourself just enough to stay in place, not because you're weak, but because your survival depends on staying familiar. This essay is not here to give you another morning routine. It's here to break the illusion, to expose the psychological warfare you're waging against yourself, and the ancient wisdom that can end it. If you're ready to stop lying to yourself, if you're ready to let the old you die so something more powerful can emerge, then keep reading. But understand this, there is no going back after this, because what you're about to see isn't a hack. It's the battlefield of the self, and you've been fighting on the wrong side. Imagine a battlefield shrouded in darkness, where the enemy isn't outside but inside. The terrain is your mind, the weapons are your thoughts, and the battlefield itself is your very identity. This is the war Kierkegaard described, the struggle between the self you are and the self you must become. For Kierkegaard, the self is not a static thing. It is a dynamic process, a constant becoming. But this process is agonizing because it demands confrontation with despair, the refusal to become what you are meant to be. He wrote that despair is the sickness unto death, a deep spiritual sickness born from the conflict of being and becoming. Here lies the brutal metaphor. Your self-sabotage is a defensive line in this war. Every hesitation, every procrastination, every destructive impulse is a soldier fighting to preserve your current identity, even if that identity is a prison. Why? Because the moment you break through that line, everything changes. The fortress of your old self falls, and what awaits is unknown. Kierkegaard divided despair into forms: unconscious despair, conscious despair, and defiance against despair. Most people live in unconscious despair, unaware of the war raging within, mistaking comfort for safety. Some reach conscious despair, a painful awareness of their self-imposed limitations. Few achieve the final stage, defiance, where the individual accepts despair and uses it as a forge for becoming authentic. Modern psychology treats procrastination or self-sabotage as bad habits to be fixed. Productivity culture offers tricks and hacks, but Kierkegaard points us to a deeper truth. These behaviors are symptoms of a soul in conflict. Your internal enemy isn't laziness. It's the terror of freedom itself. Because freedom, in Kierkegaard's eyes, is the ability to be the self you truly are, beyond social masks, fears, and illusions. But true freedom is terrifying. It demands responsibility, not only for your actions, but for your very existence. The self you sabotage is a facade propped up by excuses, fears, and identities handed to you by society or circumstance. To move beyond sabotage is to accept the chaos of freedom and to wield it with courage. This battle within is relentless. It's a war without ceasefire or retreat. Every choice either aligns with the old self's safety or the new self's uncertainty. The question Kierkegaard poses, and the one you must face, is this: will you keep fighting to preserve your cage, or will you dare to break free, embracing the agony and ecstasy of becoming? The metaphor is stark and uncompromising. You are both the prisoner and the prison guard in your own mind. Your sabotage is the guard's ruthless enforcement of rules designed to keep the prisoner locked away. But only by overthrowing the guard can the prisoner taste freedom. Kierkegaard's philosophy stands in sharp contrast to today's superficial narratives about self-improvement and mindset, where modern culture offers quick fixes, affirmations, goal-setting apps, motivational quotes. Kierkegaard demands a confrontation with the abyss. He insists that to truly overcome self-sabotage, you must first face despair head-on, not as a victim, but as a warrior. This despair is not mere sadness or pessimism. It's an existential condition arising from the tension between your finite existence and infinite possibilities. He describes 3 forms of despair. 1. Despair of not being aware of having a self, living blindly, avoiding responsibility. 2. Despair of not willing to be oneself. Awareness exists, but rejection of authentic selfhood. 3. Despair of willing to be oneself but refusing the help that would allow it, fighting against grace or transformation. Most of your self-sabotage comes from the second form. You sense who you could be, but recoil from the responsibility, risk, and vulnerability it demands. This is why motivation alone will never be enough, because your sabotage is rooted in a much deeper spiritual resistance. Kierkegaard challenges you to see yourself as a knight of faith, someone who embraces despair and uses it as a crucible for becoming authentic. Unlike the polished success gurus, Kierkegaard offers no illusions. He demands that you accept the anxiety of freedom without retreat. Embrace responsibility for your entire being, not just your actions. Confront the despair that makes you sabotage your own life. The modern world's obsession with comfort and certainty is the enemy of this process. It seduces you with distractions, postponements, and false security. But Kierkegaard's brutal wisdom cuts through the noise. Freedom is agonizing. Authenticity demands sacrifice. Self-sabotage is the last defense of your old self's ruins. The battlefield you face is not external. It is the internal war for your soul. Winning this war means dismantling every excuse, every mask, every half-truth you tell yourself to avoid the pain of growth. Only then will you stop sabotaging yourself, because there will be no self left to sabotage, only a constantly becoming self, fiercely alive and unrelenting. Self-sabotage isn't a rare event reserved for moments of crisis. It is a constant low-level war that plays out every day in subtle and unmistakable ways. You miss deadlines despite knowing the consequences. You say yes when you want to say no. You settle for relationships, jobs, or goals that don't serve your true potential. These aren't coincidences or mere bad habits. They are defensive maneuvers, an internal resistance ensuring you never fully step into your power. Consider this. How often have you postponed a project only to feel relief mixed with guilt afterward? Or how many times have you rejected praise because it made you uncomfortable, triggering self-doubt and inner criticism? These patterns repeat because they protect a fragile identity, one built on familiar pain and limited belief systems. This is why self-sabotage often feels automatic, like a reflex you cannot control. The brutal reality is that your mind is wired to protect your existing sense of self at all costs, even if it means destroying what you consciously desire. Understanding this is the first step toward breaking the cycle. You must recognize the signs of self-sabotage, not as personal failures, but as desperate survival tactics. This shift in perspective turns shame into awareness, opening the door to intentional change. Remember, the battlefield is not a place of comfort. It demands vigilance and brutal honesty. Every time you procrastinate, doubt yourself, or undermine your efforts, you are engaging in a strategic defense. The challenge is to become aware of these internal moves before they happen, to catch the guard before it locks you away. Only then can you begin the work of dismantling the fortress of self-sabotage. and building a new identity rooted in Kierkegaard's fearless embrace of authentic selfhood. Most advice you hear about self-sabotage misses the point entirely. Just get motivated. Use time blocking. Set clear goals. Visualize success. These are surface-level tactics, tools for the battlefield's outer edges, but they do nothing to address the brutal war raging inside your soul. The reason these approaches fail is simple. They treat symptoms, not causes. Self-sabotage isn't a problem of discipline or strategy. It's a problem of identity and fear. Until you confront the despair Kierkegaard described, the terror of becoming your true self, no amount of planning or motivation will break your internal defense lines. You might push yourself for a week, maybe even a month, but the moment the discomfort of freedom hits, your mind will pull you back to safety. Why? Because deep down, your brain perceives change as danger. Not physical danger, but existential danger. The threat of losing the familiar, even if it's painful. That's why self-help cliches ring hollow, and productivity hacks feel like short bursts followed by long relapses. You cannot outsmart the self that refuses to die. The battlefield demands a different strategy, one that acknowledges the spiritual and existential dimensions of your struggle. It requires courage to face despair directly, not to avoid it with distractions or superficial fixes. The brutal truth: you must tear down your false self before building a real one. No shortcuts. No easy answers. Until then, every solution will be met with sabotage, not because you're weak, but because you're fighting for survival. The first step in defeating self-sabotage is to build a mindset forged in Kierkegaard's brutal truth, that your identity is a battleground. This means accepting that growth is painful, unstable, and uncertain, and that you must choose to face that pain daily. Here's how to build this mentality, step by step. 1. Radical honesty. Stop lying to yourself about your fears and excuses. Name the self-sabotaging behaviors clearly and acknowledge the despair beneath them. 2. Daily self-examination. Before every task or decision, ask yourself, am I acting out of fear or freedom? Catch the impulse to retreat before it takes hold. 3. Embrace discomfort. Train yourself to sit with anxiety and uncertainty. Realize that discomfort is a sign you're on the battlefield, not off it. 4. Responsibility without excuses. Own your choices, including failures. Resist blaming circumstances or others. Kierkegaard teaches that freedom requires full accountability. 5. Commit to small battles. Every day, identify one moment to consciously choose authenticity over safety. It can be as simple as speaking your truth or finishing a task you dread. 6. Build resilience through repetition. Like a soldier trains for war, your mind must practice courage regularly. Consistency creates new neural pathways that weaken the old self's defense lines. Remember, this isn't about being relentlessly positive or forced motivation. It's about brutal acceptance. You are at war with yourself, and only by choosing to fight can you hope to win. Each step forward cracks the fortress of despair. Each moment of honesty and courage chips away at the guard keeping you prisoner. Your battle is not only internal. Kierkegaard's concept of the self unfolds amid an eternal tension between forces: the self's desire for freedom, virtu, and the chaos of chance and circumstance, fortuna. These ancient terms frame the struggle between your will to become authentic and the unpredictable forces trying to keep you confined. Internally, despair fights authenticity. Externally, society, culture, and even loved ones act as reinforcements of your old self, often unknowingly. They demand conformity, predictability, safety. They reinforce old narratives that keep you small. This opposition creates a double-edged war. On one side, your soul pushes to break free. On the other, the world's structures pull you back into comfort zones, roles, and identities that sabotage growth. Recognizing this dynamic is crucial. You are not failing alone. You are fighting both the internal guard and the external forces aligned with it. But here's the brutal strategic insight. To win, you must navigate both battles simultaneously. You must build your internal fortress of courage to withstand external pressures. You must cultivate inner clarity so that external chaos does not sway you. Kierkegaard's Knight of Faith embodies this dual mastery. Rooted in self, yet facing the unpredictability of the world with unwavering resolve. This tension between virtu and fortuna is not weakness. It's the crucible of transformation. Only by embracing this opposition can you transform sabotage into strength, despair into power. By now you understand the battlefield, a war within, amplified by external forces determined to keep you in chains. Winning requires more than willpower. It demands strategic mastery over yourself and your environment. Here are advanced strategies to stand firm. 1. Create rituals of power. Design daily habits that signal to your mind you are the commander of your life. Rituals create psychological anchors, making courage a default, not an exception. 2. Control your inputs. Surround yourself with people, media, and environments that reinforce your transformation. Cut ties with those who pull you into despair or conformity. 3. Use negative visualization. Prepare mentally for setbacks and resistance. Visualize sabotage attempts and rehearse your response. This builds resilience against the unexpected. 4. Develop self-compassion as a weapon. Kierkegaard's battle is brutal, but relentless self-criticism breaks morale. Learn to confront despair with compassion, stern but fair, fueling endurance instead of collapse. 5. Commit publicly. Declare your intention to change. Just as the essay's closing challenges you to write "I am the prince." Public commitment shifts your identity from passive to active, raising the stakes and sharpening resolve. 6. Keep the long view. The war for selfhood is lifelong. Celebrate small victories but prepare for ongoing battles. Success is not a destination. It's a continuous process of becoming. Master these strategies and you shift from reactive victim to deliberate warrior. You break the cycle of sabotage, turning despair into the fire that forges an unbreakable self. Now you stand at a crossroads. You've seen the brutal truth no one wants to face. You've uncovered the battlefield within yourself, the war that's been raging every day, sabotaging your life. The question is simple. Will you keep surrendering to the old self, or will you rise as the commander of your soul? The moment for excuses is over. Knowledge without action is cowardice. Transformation demands ruthless commitment. So here is your challenge. Write it down. Declare it loud. Type in the comments below, "I am the prince." This is not empty bravado. It is a solemn vow to yourself to lead your internal army with strategy, courage, and discipline. Because only when you publicly claim your authority do you begin to wield it. Only when you commit do you gain the power to dismantle the fortress of despair and self-sabotage. Remember, the war for yourself is implacable. It will test you, it will break you, but it will also build you. Those who endure become unstoppable. The rest remain prisoners of their own fears. So rise. Take your place as the sovereign of your mind. The battlefield awaits, and the victory belongs to the relentless.